everyone, Oprah here, and welcome to this week's Wisdom Wednesday. I want to show you a bit of a different view. One of my favorite places on earth is my patio garden, so welcome. Now, I probably won't be out here for the duration of this video because it is a bajillion degrees in Florida and my camera might die. So I just want to briefly kind of show you a different scenery outside of the kitchen. And reason being because I want to highlight something that is quite important to me, quite personal as well. And I just thought it was quite fitting, a lot of quites. It's very fitting given the month that we're in. We're in the month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. So for those of you who do not know, Mental Health Awareness Month came about, I want to say, in the 1940s, 50s, and it is always acknowledged in the month of May. And I'm hoping that more and more, it would catch on more and more, and that it will be something more well known within our nation, because it's something that is very, very important and that affects many, if not all of us here on earth, and especially those who work in our industry, in the food industry. So yeah, we'd love to share some insight about that, shed a little bit of light on that, and I hope you guys find it helpful. So yeah, that's enough of outside. Let's go on inside. Okay, so here are some facts. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, 1 in 5 Americans have experienced, or at least will experience sometime in their life, some form of mental illness, which also includes depression and anxiety. Now, another research conducted by by Unilever Food Solution, which is a global producer or a supplier for the food and beverage industry, they reported that 74% of chefs are sleep deprived. Surprise. And another 63% of chefs say that they feel depressed, and more than half of them go even further to say that they feel that they're being pushed to the point of breaking. And we hear a lot in our industry, burnout. It's a real thing, but that heavily affects our mental state of being, and our mindset. And if we're not careful, sometimes burnout can lead to such serious conditions that can't always easily be reversed. So it's very important for us to talk about this, for there to be more awareness around this. So hopefully we can at least try to prevent as many as we can. Like my mom always said, prevention is better than a cure, and she is right. And it's unfortunate that a lot of times that's kind of how we learn, right? We try to find a cure after the fact, but I think on a whole, we have to learn how to be more proactive and pay more attention to our mental well-being. Also, in a recent survey conducted by Chefs with Issues and the Heirloom Foundation, they did a survey that stated that 73% of those participating chefs, they suffered from multiple mental health conditions, including depression and anxiety, but also substance abuse. Kind of scary, right? And I know for a fact, working in the restaurant industry, I've come across or encountered lots of coworkers who did abuse alcohol and abuse drugs and things like that, and that was kind of their coping mechanism to deal with the pressures and the stress of working in the kitchen. One more study here before I go on into the more positive side of things, is that according to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, they did a study back in 2015, and that study that they did, it ranked the restaurant industry as the highest among 19 industries for illicit drugs, and the third highest in for heavy alcohol consumption. So basically, within that study, it showed that the food industry is among the top three industries for substance abuse and for mental disorders, which is really disheartening. But I think the pandemic has really allowed us to stop and reflect and think about how we can change things and how we can improve our systems and make for a better future, a better food, a future in the food industry, and a better career in life, and more balanced and more well-rounded and all-encompassing. And so, when life gives you lemons, you just got to learn how to make lemonade. And there's many factors that could play into why something gets undiagnosed or untreated, and you see that a lot in our industry. And it mainly has to do with just not talking about it and being more open. And because we're not talking about it and things like it is resulting in loss of lives. As I mentioned before in the very beginning, it not only affects us, but it affects pretty much everyone, not just the people that are dealing with it specifically, but also every person that they come in contact with, and so we want to make sure that we're paying attention to those warning signs and those triggers and those stressors and things like that. There is a great podcast called The Business of Baking. It's the Business of Baking podcast with Michelle Green, and she talks about what it takes to successfully run a small business, particularly a food business, a food company, without losing your mind. One of the things she does talk about that is, one of the number one reasons why she thinks, many people in our industry seems to, there's a high proportion of issues revolving stress or revolving around anxiety and depression, is because of the lack of sleep. Which it sounds so simple, but, and I know this from a personal experience, that really is kind of the foundation of your well-being, is getting adequate sleep, getting good sleep, quality sleep, and letting that be a consistent thing, so it doesn't trickle into other things, and it helps you to cope better, right? That's usually one of the things, is that when things become uncertain, we lose that foundation, that structure, that stability and certainty, and it makes things a bit more challenging to cope. So to prepare our minds to better cope, sleeping is definitely should be a high priority, which is something that is being talked about a little bit more, particularly those who work graveyard shift. It's a shift that's very common, especially for bakers, either working in the wee hours of the night or early mornings before the crack of dawn. It does take a toll after a while, especially if there are outside factors that also play into that as well. So I would say that's the first thing, right, is being on top of our sleep. And it's much easier said than done when you're working in this industry, but I think it's super important. And just to kind of segue into what can we do better. I've seen one professional kind of put it this way, is that, forgiveness, the art of forgiveness, it's so simple, but it can be so effective in helping us just handle day-to-day life and relationships that we find ourselves in. And a lot of times, because we work in such a fast-paced environment, we tend to, how do I put this? Be a bit rough around the edges, and it's a bit harder to let things go. We want to find someone to blame when things go wrong and stuff like that. So if you do work in an area, in a food establishment, having more moments of or harboring a environment of compassion and understanding and patience and forgiveness can mean a lot to someone, especially if they have things going on at home. Also, just making sure the culture isn't one that's hostile. A lot of kitchen culture can be a bit hostile, and it makes people fearful or even more stressed than they need to be, because remember, it's not just work, right? People have things, a whole entire life outside of that. And if things aren't going outside of home, and then you have to come to work and there's still all this chaos and madness and this hostile environment, it kind of makes things a bit harder to cope with. That's kind of like the discussion that is happening more and more, and I think that's a discussion that should continue to happen within our industry, is how do we build better kitchen culture. And yeah, so, and I think it starts with management, but also it is also the responsibility of just individual co-workers, and just looking out for each other, because at the end of the day, we're all a team. Whether it's a team in a bake shop, a team in a restaurant, a team in our household, a team, we're all a team on this world, on this earth, right? And we need to find ways to work better as a team, and to not add to the stressors in life, if that's possible, or at least learn how to manage them a bit better and cope with them a bit better. So yeah, I want to leave it off with just this one idea here, this one kind of topic here, and that is the topic of using baking as a form of therapy. So, as we all know, baking, it's very creative, and it's also very rewarding. It's an instant reward. It's something that you get to make, you get to enjoy, and you can also watch others enjoy it. Because I've worked in this industry, or I was a professional in it, I didn't see it as a form of therapy. It was more a labor of love kind of thing. It wasn't until I got out of it that I saw it as something that could help to calm my mind and help me to be mindful, which is one of the most important practices in trying to manage or combat depression and anxiety, is practicing mindfulness, which means being in the moment, not worrying about the past or the future, but just seeing things as they are in the moment, and living in that, and accepting that. And so we saw a lot of people kind of take up bread baking, which is really cool. And I hope you guys all check out BAKERpedia.com to learn all the ins and outs of bread baking. Also CBD baking as well. CBD, I mean, why not, if we're talking about, mental health and things like that. Obviously, the topic of hemp and CBD is a big one. And I think it's something that's here to stay. It's not just a trend. I think it's something that's here to stay, and we all should be learning a little bit more about it as much as we can, and seeing how we can incorporate that in our menu, or in our personal lives. So yeah, check BAKERpedia.com for those topics there. Yeah, as you can see, as we all know, bread making specifically is a survival skill that requires very little equipment or ingredients, and not only that, it does help with stress, because having that connection to the dough, to the ingredients, using all your senses, be it sight, smell, sound, taste, hearing, sound, it's the same thing. It is all helpful to help alleviate stress. And yeah, as one social worker, her name is Julia Ohana, she does cooking therapy classes. She talks about it being therapeutic because, basically what it boils down to, therapy, something that's therapeutic, what it means to her is that it feels good, it's something that is helpful, and it's beneficial all at the same time. And that's what bacon can do for all of us. Just our craft is a labor of love, as I mentioned before. Yeah, be mindful, be compassionate, continue to learn, have an open mind, and let's just keep talking and keep moving forward. Until next time, guys, happy eating.